typed in our data with the little punch holes in these cards, and we had these stacks of them, right?
Boxes, right?
Boxes and boxes of them that we'd carry around, and God help us if the order shifted.
That's right. Yeah.
And we would put it in at one night, at the end of the night, right?
Yeah.
And pray that the next morning we came up with some data.
There was a station on the second floor,
That's
right next to the epi department.
That's
there was a card reader and a printer.
That's right, and that's where we all stuffed it in at night and said, pray and prayed, and then went home.
And there was a key punch machine in the epi student room.
That's right. There was one.
And also a file cabinet with drawers for cards.
That's right. That was it. It was very rudimentary, you might say.
So what did you do your word processing on for your thesis and your dissertation and your proposals? Do you remember?
I used SPSS, I think. It was primitive SPSS.
For your word processing, not statistical analysis, but
the word processing. What
That's
word processing?
Of a joke.
Are you kidding me? Of course. I remember typing away on this electric keyboard typewriter that I thought was just state of the art.
Right?
Yes, exactly. And
electric.
my dissertation, I finally left to a legal secretary. I don't know if you did the same thing, because it was such a bear to keep retyping. Whenever you had comments from faculty members, you had to go back and retype all the pages. And I had to do this with all my master's theses too. It was a bear of an experience when it came to, word processing. There wasn't, and so we did what we could do. Everything was paper bound, and you had to get it in by a certain time. All of the rules on the margins and everything still existed, but we were.
And they measured them in those days,
oh,
too.
Oh my goodness, they did measure them. I forgot that experience. Yeah. So word processing, statistical analyses, wow. It was quite primitive, quite primitive. I remember this was the era of Olli Miettinen. I had to do an analysis with linear regression and logistic regression to show that whether there were differences.
Really?
Yes.
Logistic regression?
Yes, because he came out with this, and he said, look, you've got to adjust and stratify. And so that's what we did to analyze in his format. The Harvard mantra of methods was coming on. It was just the start of it. So I did 2 sets of analyses.
So what did you use for logistic regression? They didn't have maximum likelihood programs.
No, they didn't. I don't know what Dave Kleinbaum gave me. It was Dave who gave me whatever it was,
There was a linear regression
analog.
Well, yeah, an approximation or something like that.
Yes, and that's what it was. But my committee made me do it. And a lot of committees made us do, as Debbie Wynn had this too. I remember her saying, oh, and I had to do the analysis in 2 different ways. I said, yeah, wasn't that fun? We got the same results, which was probably
fortunate.
Right, it was. But yeah, that was very high times at that point, right?
So how about your methods training? So you took Epi 160.
Yes.
And then
I took the whole sequence.
But what was the next?
Didn't Tyroler have the next sequence?
Well, that's what I'm trying to remember, because it was 268.
I took 268.
But David Kleinbaum refashioned 268, but I think you may have taken it before he did.
I did.
So you took it from Al Tyroler?
I took it from Al Tyroler, and he was brilliant at it, because he kept it so simple, and he really explained it like nobody could, because he had to drill it down to an understanding from a tabula rasa, basically, other than 160, right? And so Al was, par excellence, one of the best teachers of epi methods. There's no question in my mind. And then he worked with your thesis, doing what he taught you in the class in your thesis. Mm-hmm. So you applied it, which then Dave Kleinbaum did with his course and made it brilliant.
Now,
right?
David's course was?
All of the multiple linear regression and
the bias 145.
Bias 145, yes, that whole sequence.
And so when Al Tyroler was teaching 268, that was the pre-Olli Miettinen version, right?
That's right. Yes, it was.
And what I heard, the story I heard, was that Hal Morgenstern.
Yes.
Do you want to tell that story? Because you were there for it.
Well, first let me tell you a story about Sherman's first class with us.
Mm.
So Sherman has this first class, and he does the MMPI test on all of us, right? The Minnesota
multiphasic personality inventory.
Hal's in my class. Debbie's in my class.
Can we get the results of these tests? That would be really interesting.
Wouldn't it? And an anthologist at heart, right? An anthropologist. I'm watching Sherman give out the results. And whatever Hal got was not the same as the rest of us. I had no idea what it was, but I'm making a joke of it. But Sherman took this and said, Epi is a team science, and some of you are going to be very good at this, and some of you are not.
But how can you be good at the MMPI? I mean, that's
right,
your personality.
The personality for a team scientist, okay?
Oh, I see.
And so that's how he was taking to apply to us. So that was a fun part of it. And
What year was that? Do you remember?
What was his first year teaching?
So it would have been 74?
70.
Fall 74,
Fall
or
74
spring
or
75?
spring 75, something like
Okay.
that. Hal Morgenstern's in the class. Okay. Hal's frustrated with Mietnin. Hal is Hal. And Hal is starting to think about writing this book.
Wait, he's frustrated with Mietnin?
With the methods that are going on, and not Mietnin himself, but he's frustrated with the way methods are being taught.
Here?
Here.
Because he goes
Yes.
to the summer course that Ken Rothman
Yes,
teaches?
that's right. And he comes back fired up.
And you must have gone to that too, right? It was in Minnesota?
I went to the Minnesota course, but I went a year earlier. And I was in a very benign summer course compared to the one that I
So,
got
as I recall, all of the students here, or just about all, would go to University of Minnesota summer program.
That's right. We
each
all
year.
did. We all did. And I was taught by Henry Blackburn in cardiovascular disease.
Wow.
There were titans there who
Mhm.
took advantage for that course. That summer program was exceptional. Again, it gave you another lens in of how were other students being trained, and what could you garner from the lens of epidemiologists at other locations, particularly Minnesota. And I remember Blackburn teaching us how to do a blood pressure measurement.
Mm-hmm.
He literally got into the classroom and did this with us, so there was a lot of hands-on there. But Hal was not in my...
And Hal did it the following year.
He did it the following year.
And that was the year that Ken Rothman taught his
Right,
course.
broke it open, right? Now, Ken Rothman was brought up in the same hometown that I was, Long Beach,
Really?
New York. Yes, down the street from me.
Oh my goodness.
And Ken's mother and my mother were very close friends.
Did you know him before in that
I
era?
didn't really know him, he was much older than me.
Uh-huh.
But yes, our mothers knew each other. So
Wow.
talk about double clicks and serendipity.
Yeah.
So getting back to Hal,
Yeah.
Hal was fired up about writing this book. Hal gets Dave Kleinbaum and Cooper, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And he starts writing this book, and a couple of us read every chapter for him. I'm one of them, in the first book that came out.
And that would have been,
The first year that they published that
well,
book.
it was
the epi-doctoral students in his classes who read the chapters for him.
so
to
in
make sure
fall
they-
'78,
Yeah.
David was handing out the chapters each week. We'd get a new chapter.
But
So it must
before
have
that,
been
Hal was
Well, I was going to say,
handing
so
out
it was fall
drafts.
'78. They were handing out what was going to become the text.
That's right.
Must have been in
It was
in
the drafts.
Spring, I'm sorry, spring '78. Must have been spring '77.
We were handed out the drafts by Hal. It was fall '76.
Fall '76.
We were handed out the drafts by Hal and sending them back to him.
Wow.
To
Now,
to
Hal
his
didn't write the
family.
whole book. He didn't write the draft of the whole book, did he? Because I
No,
thought
he didn't.
each of them wrote wrote
Yes.
chapters.
That's right. And so the chapters he was responsible for, he
How
had,
about measures? Wasn't it on incidence and
Yes.
prevalence?
and Debbie and I and Janet Meininger, we all read this for him.
Wow.
Yes, so in the beginning, he took advantage of the students, which was a great idea. And so, yeah, that was part of this experience. I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah.
And as I recall, he actually taught a version of what became 268, except it had a different number, 270 something, I think.
You're better on numbers than I
Well,
am.
not
But
about that,
he taught that, that's right, I heard that.
And that was,
That was early on.
yeah, it was in 76
It was in the
or
70s,
so,
yeah,
something like that.
75, 76, he was already really going in. And Hal came in with a background in urban,
Architecture, as I recall.
urban something, and all different types of degrees. So he was the man for all season when it came for having a multitude of degrees.
So Hal was my TA when I took Epi 268.
Okay.
So I took 268 in the spring of '78,
Okay.
and that was the first year they were teaching.
The book.
Well, I don't know if it was the first. I mean, the book hadn't come out yet
Yes.
as a book, but
Right.
the chapters were coming out serially. at least, and they were in final proofing version.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was all very nice then.
Right.
And Hal was the TA in
Yes.
the lab.
Yes.
And the following year, I became a TA in Epi 268.
Okay, there you, the lineage goes.
And
keeps
Hal
going
would
on.
tutor me a little bit. I did need
He was
some
a
help.
precisionist.
Yes, he was really good and very
Yes.
good at explaining things.
Yes, that's right.
Very good.
So, yeah, that was another thread of things that were, well, things were always going on here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how the faculty here could do as much teaching as they did, keep their clinical practice if they were clinical, and keep the research going. It was a different era. It just was.
It was a different era. The money was a little easier to get, I think.
I can't agree enough.
If you want to speak about that, since you've had experience now in
Yeah,
various
yeah.
money environments.
So, the way to say it is that if you started writing your grants in the 70s and early 80s, you were going to get a grant. You were going to get an R01. And we all know now it is so tough. The challenges that happen to the people now in study section are vast. The amount of knowledge that they have to capture and to synthesize is so much greater. And so I can't even remember my first grant, but I do know that it was very easy to get it. It just was.
Mhm.
And then AID was funding us in international research.
USAID.
USAID, yeah. And then the U.S. Israel Binational was funding us. This is all about the Bedouin study and everything. We had tremendous funding. And it was this whole tsunami of funds that were available, I would say, in the 70s and 80s, that by, I would say, the late 80s started to die off.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think? I mean,
Yes.
That's when it got tougher. But by then, we all had proven ourselves. I thought it was a joke. We've proven ourselves, really, compared to what they have to do now.
Mm-hmm.
So my son David now is in his 30s and writing grants, and it's a very challenging time, really is. And the grants now, you have to put an LOI in, and you're ecstatic if you get the letter of intent approved, right? And then you have to, you're challenged to write this very short grant and get everything in. And then if you're in study section, we on study section know there are things that have to be missing. It's impossible in those pages to really provide all the information that one wants. And it's very tough to challenge ourselves to assess grants from the lens that we have to challenge ourselves now, I think. I'm part of the anonymous reviewers also. Are you part of that?
Mm-hmm.
So NIH has a coterie of individuals who are not in study section, we're reviewing grants that had been reviewed by study sections anonymously to see whether the scores are reproducible in study sections. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Interesting.
It is, and a number of us are on this. And I have no idea how my scores are compared to what study section provided, but I'm doing it alone. So not with the enhancement of the individuals. They don't provide references. So sometimes I'm
References meaning
the references
the
of
bibliographic
references.
references?
And sometimes I'm pecued by that, and I contact the SRO and say, look, I've got to have the references. I can't read
Yeah.
this that well. They take out any identifiers of the institution or the person, and then you're on green for go. I think it's a great exercise because in study section we know there are alpha males and females, and we know what happens, right? If they get a hold of a grant and they want it or they don't want it, it's a very tough time, and it's very challenging. So that's, I think, something that people were much more benign in study section. And they
In
were
that
in
era.
the intramural, in the earlier era. And then I was on the intramural side of NIH, so every 5 years I had academic reviews by academics. And it was tough. If you were smart, you read everybody's papers who were your reviewers, and you did a lot of homework, but you could get approved. Whereas we were hearing clearly on the outside, and I was at Hopkins at this time, and now I'm in the late 80s of my career, and doing vitamin A research in mothers and children trials. And it's tough, and we're knowing it. And it is what it is, as it is today. So I think if we can keep people in academics, if we can maintain a cadre of intramural scientists at NIH, I think we'll do, that should be our goal.
To maintain a cadre of intramural scientists.
Intramural scientists as well as academics. Because the intramural side can do projects that would never be funded on the extramural side because they're so unique. So I'll talk about my research in preeclampsia today, and that research started by being funded in the intramural side. I don't think it would have been okay in the study section, although I subsequently found grants in the study section. But to start it, the starter.
Right, because it's higher risk.
Oh, it's high risk. It's a low percentage rate of women who are pregnant each year, 3 to 8% are preeclamptics. Diagnosis is changing in front of you, the criteria all the time. And so you're challenged just for those factors in mind. So it's an interesting time. I think that we're facing right now, it's very different than what you and I faced in this environment. And yet my memories are so fond and so positive of this place. I couldn't have thought of another place to be trained. What about you? You were trained up and back.
My story is so bizarre that I won't